Hello and welcome to the Wally Bressler Show. Fortunately, I get to be Wally Bressler every day. Thank you so much for taking some time to watch my show. So, who am I? Well, I'm a life and business coach. I've got 25 years in the real estate experience, with 22 of those years coaching some of the top real estate agents across the United States and Canada. I'm a best-selling author. I've had the good fortune of being on national television as a guest expert on how to overcome sales call reluctance. And I've done over 40,000 live one-on-one coaching calls, trainings, and group sessions for all of these agents and other salespeople around the United States and Canada. But who I really am is somebody who's overcome a really, really, really challenging childhood and a really tough life to become somebody who now works with others to help them create the best life and business they can for themselves and their family. A lot of folks don't realize this, but what is keeping them from being successful today in their business, in life, in relationships, and in anything else they're doing has everything to do with what happens when they're children. For me, it was kind of a crazy childhood, and I'm going to share this with you so you can understand how what happens as a child can have such a huge impact on you as you grow up. I grew up in a middle class household, lower middle class. When we were poor when we were younger, but we kind of moved up into middle class as we got older. But when I was 4, 5, and 6 years old, one of my punishments was to be sent to bed without food, and that really had everything to do with what happened with my parents when they were raised. They both came from Brooklyn and Queens, New York, respectively. That would be my mom and my dad, and they both came from Italian households. And if you've ever seen an Italian household or been part of an Italian household, you know that there are three main ways of communicating. One is food, one is getting hit, and one is getting yelled at. And so that's kind of how things happen. And, my parents both had tough upbringings, especially my dad. His mom was a very, very mean woman, was physically, emotionally, psychologically abusive to my dad and his sister. My mom's family, my grandfather was an immigrant, and he and his wife or my grandmother, they didn't even graduate from high school. So they basically did lots of just day-to-day jobs to take care of the family. And so my parents didn't learn a lot of parenting skills from their parents. And so being sent to bed without dinner that young was an okay punishment for them, because they felt like they were doing the best job they could. The problem was that it sparked a ginormous binge eating disorder in me. In fact, I started having eating issues by the age of 6 and 7. In fact, when I was in first grade, the very first day of school, it was morning snack time, and we were having our snack, and everybody else ate all their morning snack and their milk, and I drank my milk and my morning snack and my lunch and my afternoon snack because I was afraid I wasn't going to eat. And I started sneaking food and whatnot. In fact, my binge eating got so bad, my weight actually got up to 480 pounds. So it was tough. When I was 10, I was sexually abused. When I was 11, I was starting to look at pornography. And when I was 12, I actually started having sex and engaging in sexual activity. And in that entire time, I was bullied mercilessly by kids, adults, teachers, even in my area. And so by the time I was 14, I pretty much was in bad shape emotionally, psychologically, mentally, low self-esteem, low self-worth. I mean, little self-loathing, anxiety issues, some depression issues, and I was in really rough shape. Back in the 60s and 70s, they weren't talking about child abuse and sex abuse. So my parents never told me, hey, tell us if somebody touches their body, or don't touch anybody else's body. And so I had all these things to reconcile with my little 10, 11, 12-year-old brain. And so, but at the age of 14, I went from being the person who was getting hurt to the person who did the hurting. And so for the next 35 years, I went on a path of incredible self-destruction and self-sabotage. Over that period of time, I probably wasted about $5 million. I got married, and I was unfaithful to my wife 4 separate times. I've blown tons of relationships with friends and family members. My mom died when I was 39. My dad died when I was 23. Never dealt with that. And from the day my dad died, I worried if I was going to die every day. So it got so bad that I started making even worse decisions, and I started doing real estate investing in the early 2000s. And I ended up spending a year in federal prison for mail fraud. My partner was the loan originator. He lied on $15 million worth of mortgages. And although I wasn't trying to steal money, the fact of the matter is I was involved with an enterprise that did have money stolen from banks, and there were things I looked at that I looked the other way on that I shouldn't have. And so I had to accept responsibility for doing that. And so I spent 366 days in federal prison in Forest City, Arkansas. And then about, let's call it 6, 7 months after I got out of prison, I met a woman, and I really wanted to do a good job in that relationship. And quite honestly, while I was in prison, I never ever thought that anybody would ever want me. So the fact that somebody was attracted to me was amazing. And so I tried to do everything I could to make that relationship work. It was extremely toxic. And, I actually asked this person to marry me. And after 4.5 years of things not working out, and her not being willing to move down here from the state she lived in, I broke up with her. And 3 days later, I found out that she was actually married the entire time we were together, and that everything she told me was a lie. And so that was devastating to me, so devastating to me, because it was literally the worst bad decision in the list of the thousands of bad decisions that I had made. And I decided a month later that I was going to take my life. And fortunately, I did not. A short conversation with God reminding me how horrible it was for my family when my dad died. I couldn't do that to my children. And so I went on a path of improvement and self-discovery and started working on myself and doing all the things that I probably should have done if I knew to do all of them when I was younger, and processed a bunch of the pain, a bunch of the sadness, and got to the point where I started looking at other people who I work with, my clients, my friends, my family members, and tried identifying why they weren't able to do the things they needed to do, why they kept getting in the same bad relationships, why they weren't able to pick up the phone to make phone calls, why they couldn't get in front of a video camera, why they couldn't go to the gym consistently, why they couldn't eat every day, eat well, and stick to a diet, why their goals kept falling short for them, why they couldn't stick to a calendar, all those things. They're just all the things that require consistency that they just couldn't do. And while consistency isn't necessarily the most important thing in life, it is the strategy that drives success. And so I've spent the last 4 years of my life finding ways to help people identify the challenges that they've had in their life, or specifically their childhood, that impacted them to such a degree that they were unable to do the things that they wanted to. 60% of salespeople, 60% have a very strong need to be liked. In fact, it's so strong that it gets in their way to do the things they need to do, like prospect, cold call, advance sales down a path, to take a call further than just hello, to handle objections. And a lot of salespeople don't hit their goals. A lot of salespeople don't manage their time well. A lot of salespeople are having trouble financially. Okay, and it all comes down to, for most people, it comes down to the fact that something happened when they were younger that impacted them in such a way that it changed the way they believed about themselves. It created these hidden identities that basically tell them what they can and can't do, who they can and can't be, what they are and aren't worth, what they should and shouldn't get. And it impacts every aspect of their life. So as I did some more research and took a look at things, what I realized is there's different categories of things that happen that basically trigger our fight or flight, or fight, freeze, or flight instinct. And so what happens is it could be physical, sexual, emotional abuse. It could be a near-death experience for you. It could be a near-death experience for somebody else. It could be that you were bullied, like I was. It could be that you created this belief system or this hidden identity all on your own. I grew up poor for a good portion of my life, and or at least a good portion of my childhood. And I saw that I had different clothes than other kids. I saw that the lunch I ate was different than other kids. And I saw these distinctions and created in my own mind a belief system that I was not worthy. Okay. I created a scarcity consciousness, which is part of what led to me blowing millions of dollars over the period of my lifetime, because I just didn't respect the money. I didn't think I deserved it. And quite honestly, I used it to try and get people to like me. And then there could have been something where your parents did something, and our parents obviously have a huge impact on our lives, because we spend at least half of our time, if not more than half of our time, with them from the time we're born until we leave for college in most cases. Or if you didn't spend time with them, that could have impacted you too. So if you had an alcoholic parent, or if your parents got divorced when you were younger, or if one of your parents was a narcissist, or if your parents fought all the time, or even if your parents didn't fight, okay, any one of those things could have a huge impact on triggering your fight or flight instinct. So what happens now is your fight or flight instinct gets triggered because of the trauma, because of the fear. And one of two things happens. You either, one of three things technically, right? You either fight back and you're like, you know what, I'm never going to let you hurt me ever again. And you fight your entire life, and you fight and you fight and you fight, and you let nothing hurt you. Or you go into freeze or flight mode and you avoid and you run, and you avoid everything that could possibly hurt you, which is what I did. In fact, I suffered from call reluctance for 10 years myself. And so then I just avoided everything that could possibly hurt me. Okay. So meaningful relationships, prospecting, cold calling, sticking to goals, great, huge avoidance strategies. In fact, all of which led to addictions to not only food, but also to money, sex, and pornography. So off the rails with respect to that. And so what happens then is we get triggered. And then every time something comes up that scares us in that way, it strengthens the desire to fight or run. And we also, when we see things, even though we don't experience them directly, we can fight or run. Then we spend our entire lives building that belief system, those hidden identities, that strategy within inside ourselves. And then now we're 20, 30, 40, 50 years old, and we can't figure out why we're not able to accomplish things in life, why we keep dating and marrying the same people, why we keep wasting all the money that we make, why we can't lose weight, why we wake up at night and can't go back to sleep or can't get to sleep at all. And all these dysfunctions that are happening in our life. And it gets worse and worse and worse. In fact, the longer you leave it unattended to, the worse it's going to get. And because our brains have a very specific function of keeping us alive and keeping us safe, we're never going to be able to push it all the way down, because our brain is always going to bring back up all the things we need to do to go ahead and get ourselves squared away. So now, if you're watching this and this is making sense to you, the good news is that you're not stuck with it. Right? We can always make a change in the things we need to make a change in. Right? I think Will Smith says it best. He's got this 2-minute plus video that I love. I share it with all my clients. It's called Fault versus Responsibility. And basically what he says is, it's not your fault that things happened to you when you were younger. Alcoholic parent, physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, any of the things that I mentioned earlier. It's not your fault. However, it is your responsibility to take back your emotional strength, as he calls it. Okay. It's your job to go ahead and not let the things of the past continue to keep you in victim mode. In fact, as of today, if you're watching this or listening to this, you can no longer be a victim, because you now know that there's a way to fix the problem. Now, victim mode is great. And somebody asked me something the other day. They're like, why do you think people are so attracted to victim mode? And I said, well, I don't think people are necessarily attracted to victim mode. I just think it's a safe place for them, because it gives them the consistent feeling that they've had their entire life. And it also gets them lots of attention. Okay. And when you're in victim mode, it's usually because of some sort of pain, and you want that attention to hopefully, assuage that pain. But the fact of the matter is, it gets worse and worse. So anyway, as of this moment, you are no longer a victim. Okay. You could have been a victim. I was a victim, not taking away anything that bad that happened to you or to me. But as of this moment, you are no longer a victim. So the question now is, Wally, is what do I do? And I'm glad you asked. So I've come up with a 5-step process to help people overcome the issues, the challenges that lead to this call reluctance or video reluctance, or all the other stuff I mentioned earlier, where people are not receiving or getting the results that they want in their life. So the first step is awareness. Okay, it's pretty straightforward. I want you to go ahead and, after you're done listening to this or watching this podcast here, I want you to get a couple of note cards. And on the note cards, I want you to write one simple question: what is the cause of my? And you can put in car reluctance, or you can put in video reluctance, or you can put in perfectionism, or procrastination, or imposter syndrome, or why am I unable to go to sleep and stay asleep, or whatever it is. Okay, it doesn't matter what it is. You can go ahead and put it on there. And I want you to write that on each card. And I want to have you keep one card with you for the rest of the day. And I want you to read it. I want you to put the other one next to your nightstand and read it tonight before you go to bed. And then what's going to happen is tonight while you're asleep, or the night that you're asleep, when you finally do it, your brain's going to go to work and it's going to find all those things for you. And here's what I mean. Your brain remembers everything that you've ever said, touched, heard, smelled, seen, all of it. Okay. All the 5 senses. So anything that's ever happened in your life that you've experienced, your brain remembers it. Now, it remembers it in like sandwich style, stacking things on top of things. And that's why some things are really, really far down. But you can talk to your subconscious. Okay. And you can ask it questions. And then you ask it this question, your subconscious is going to go find the answer for you. Now, here's the thing. You're going to remember some pretty unexciting things. Okay. It's going to have a bit of a suck factor to it, because there may be things you hadn't thought about in years, decades even. But if you want to make the change in your life you need to be radically honest with yourself. And more importantly, you have to be willing to go ahead and look at where the problem started. Right? Because we can't solve a problem if we don't know where it started, right? We can't shoot a target. If we can't see it, we can't solve a problem. If you go to the doctor and say, hey, my head hurts, the doctor's going to say, okay, lay down, we're going to operate. Right? That's not what the doctor does. The doctor says, okay, what about this? Where does it hurt here? How about this? How long has it been happening? Same thing for you. You want to make all this stuff go away and become the person that you were meant to be, the business person you were meant to be, the husband or wife, the girlfriend, the boyfriend, right? All those, whatever it is that you're meant to be, you've got to go ahead and you've got to face it and you got to go find it. And that's the easiest way to find it, is to go ask. In fact, while I've been talking about this, some of you have actually already started to go and look. In fact, your brain took over and said, hey, I want to go find this, because your brain wants you to be happy. It wants you to be at peace. It wants understanding. It wants clarity, because that's its job. Now, once you do this exercise, the next step is to go into situational awareness, right? So we've got this global awareness of, hey, this is where this is all coming from. Let's talk about the situational awareness. And what I mean is this, is that when you are triggered, an emotion is supposed to come up, all right? And almost every emotion has some sort of physical experience, some sort of physical representation. Okay, for me, when I get anxious, my toes go crazy. In fact, when I was younger and didn't realize what I was dealing with, I would move my toes, push my feet into the floor of my shoes, whatever, for hours. And by the end of the day, my feet would be on fire and I'd have to go lay down and put them up because they hurt so much. But there is a physical representation that goes along with that emotion, and you have to identify it. Anxiety has a physical representation. Depression has a physical representation, right? Your physiology is 100% tied into every feeling that you have. But most of us, when we get that feeling, rather than acknowledging it, we push it away with procrastination. Oh, look at all those dishes in the sink. I got to go clean those all of a sudden. I get triggered. Oh my God, look at the laundry. I got to go ahead and clean all the laundry, or something like that. Or you become a perfectionist and you become like the getting ready to get ready person, or you get into addiction mode. You go food, sex, drugs, cigarettes, alcohol, too much exercise, too much work, too much anything, just to avoid dealing with what that is. But what I'm telling you is that when those feelings come up, if you would just acknowledge them for a second and let them pass, eventually they would stop impacting you. You wouldn't get triggered to the point where that trigger would cause crazy emotional reactions, or the desire to hide, the desire to cry, the desire to do something that's unhealthy for you. And so it's just a matter of saying, okay, awareness, this is anxiety. Let's define it. Okay, this is definitely anxiety, and I'm identifying this anxiety because it is making me feel this way. And then you become mindful. Mindful is nothing more than focusing on the right now, focusing on your breathing. Right? If I think about the future and all the crappy things that can happen and all the uncertainty, that goes and gives me anxiety, gives me fear, right? If I think about all the things in the past that happened that were sad or hurtful, I can get depressed. Okay, and then that creates depression and sadness. But I'm focusing right now on this very moment, and I'm focusing on this breathing. I'm not going to feel anything. Okay, I'm just going to relax. And so what I recommend you do is that when you feel these individual emotions, when they pop up, I want you to stop and do some square breathing or some box breathing, which is nothing more than taking a breath in for a 4 count, holding it for a 4 count, letting it out for a 4 count, and then doing a hold for a 4 count again. So let's it's like this. It's 4, 4, 4, 4, and just repeating that over and over and over again. Eventually, that will get you out of fight and flight, or fight, freeze, and flight, and into what we call rest and digest. And rest and digest is nothing more than doing what we're doing right now. It's just chilling, relaxing. All our bodily functions are normal, and our body's not getting ready for us to go and scrap with somebody or to take off. You can control that. And the great thing is as you control letting these bad emotions dig in and take root and create horrible and disempowering states for you, you can also choose empowering emotions and happy emotions and good emotions. You get to choose those. So not only do you get to stop the ones that are hurting you, but you also get to use the ones and implement the ones that make you feel good. So it's pretty cool. Here's the other thing. Through the benefit of neuroplasticity, you're going to rewire your brain. By forcing yourself to focus on what's going on right now, you're going to go ahead and force your brain and teach your brain to not let disempowering emotions and thoughts creep into your brain. And eventually, what bothers you now won't bother you in the future. Eventually, what triggers you now won't trigger you in the future, and your brain will start taking over and doing some of the work for you. And I'm telling you, that is so freeing. People start sleeping better. They start having better relationships. It's just amazing. So decide today that once you find out what those experiences were that created this unhappiness for you, this sadness, this quality of life you're not enjoying, start acknowledging all of the symptoms, which is these these horrible things that are happening, these bad things that are happening during the day, and these feelings, and start letting them flow and letting them out. Okay. Step 3 is rewire your brain, right? You got here, as Zig Ziglar would say, you are where you are because of what's going into your mind. And if you want to change where you are and where you're going, you want to change what goes into your mind. And so what that means is that you've got to start implementing some affirmations. You've got to start doing mindful meditation on a daily basis. You've got to go ahead and start journaling. You've got to read, right? You got to exercise. Okay. You got to start doing the things, affirmation, visualization, even. You've got to start changing what goes into your brain actively. You've got to take an active or be an active participant in what goes into your brain. And the more you do that, the more your brain will listen, the more your thought processes will change, the more your beliefs about yourself will change. Everything will change, but you've got to take an active role in making sure this happens. After that, I have people start thinking about what they want and really get excited about what they want in life. And then I like what Daniel Pink does. He talks about autonomy and mastery and purpose as part of a strategy to go ahead and really figure out what you want to get in life and how to stay motivated towards it. So think about it. When your life is the way you want it, when you have full autonomy over your life, meaning you're making the decisions as to what you do, when you do it, how you do it, what does that look like? How does that feel to you? What's happening in your life? And then in order for that to happen, what do you have to master? What are all the things you have to master to make that happen? I can tell you one of those things for everybody is their ability to manage their emotions, right? Going from emotional reactivity to emotional responsiveness and deciding how we're going to feel about certain experiences at any given time. And by doing that, we don't let our emotions go off the rails either too high or too low, and we stay focused on doing the things we need to do when we need to do them, okay? And then the last thing is really figuring out your purpose, figuring out your why. A lot of folks are like, oh, my kids are my why. This car is my why. This house is my why, which are all valid things in people's lives, but those aren't whys. Your kids are a who. Your car is a what. Your house is a what. Retirement is a when, right? Those are all things, right? Your why is comprised of two things. Number one, and this is how Simon Sinek puts it, and I love it. Number one, it's rooted in some sort of pain. And it's a pain that either you want to avoid or that you want somebody else to avoid. And then it's also something you have to impact the outcome over, right? So let's just say your kids are your focus here, right? So let's say the pain, like me, poor as a child, for as a young child, not knowing how to use money for a good portion of my life. I don't want my kids to go through that, right? So the pain for me is not having money for a good portion of my life because I blew it and didn't understand it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make enough money, not only to give my kids some money to work with, but also teach them how to use it. Right. So my 4 children all have debit cards, and, they're all on, 16, 19, 21, and 23, but they've all had them for years now. Okay. And 3 of them have credit cards. Okay. And so the point is I'm teaching them how to use these things properly so that they know how to use money, and so that they use money and money doesn't use them like it did me. Okay. So in a quick recap here, we're going to go ahead and we're going to figure out exactly what it is that's causing all of this unrest in us. And then we're going to go ahead and become situationally aware on a daily basis of all the things that come up, identify those triggers and emotions, and then respond positively to them by engaging in something like box breathing, square breathing. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to start rewiring our brain and start saying the things we need to say to ourselves, and engage in visualization and affirmations and exercise. And, Hal Elrod's got a great book called The Miracle Morning that tells you how to do all of these things to get a great morning ritual for this whole thing. And then next, we're going to go into figuring out what we want and what we need to do to get it. And then lastly, we're going to spend time on our why. Okay. And I'm telling you, if you take the time to go through this process, you can make incredible changes in yourself in a very, very short period of time. One of the classes I teach people how to go through this entire process. It's a 2-month course. It's 8 weeks. And people are literally getting on the phone after years of not being on the phone in 2 months. They're letting go of pains of the past. They're having conversations with people that they should have had decades ago. And they are freeing themselves of, for lack of a better word, the shackles that have been holding them back from achieving the life that they want. And so it is 100% possible. Like I said earlier, you may have been a victim up until now, but you're no longer a victim because there is a way to make the change. And what I'm saying to you is that it's not going to change on its own. Okay. I begged God, I prayed, I did all kinds of things but do the work to try and make things change, and the thing is, we search out all these exterior things. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change the way I eat, or I'm going to read scripts and dialogues, or I'm going to shadow somebody, or we do all these things. We do like the Mexican hat dance around the one thing we need to do, which is to work on ourselves. Okay. And so it can absolutely 100% be done for you. And so what I'm saying to you is, as we look at this uncertainty going forward in the world we live here right now in 2023, the fact of the matter is, the one certain thing is that you can control the outcome for your life by taking control of what's going on in your head and in your heart. And I'm super excited to be able to share this with you on my podcast. And I'm going to be having a regular guest on my podcast every week, somebody who also has overcome significant challenges like I have, and maybe has overcome the challenge that you need to overcome. And we're going to be talking to some of the best and brightest salespeople and coaches and influencers in the sales industry from around the United States and Canada, and maybe even from around the world. And I'm excited for you to join me, because I know that you could see one person here, one thing that could change your life forever. So be on the lookout for my podcast. I'm going to be out there every week. It's the Wally Bressler Show, not hard to remember. And you can contact me if you need anything. You can go to my webpage, triggersalesystem.com. I offer anybody who wants to a free 30-minute session with me. If you're feeling a little weird now and you want to find out exactly what it is that's keeping you from getting the results you want, please go ahead and grab some time. Let's talk. And I would love to help you out. So the only thing I'm going to wish you from now until the next time you see me is, I'm going to ask you to be kind to yourself. Okay, we are nicer to other people than we've ever been to ourselves. We say things to ourselves we would never say to children or other people. So I'm just going to ask you to, when you start thinking bad things about yourself, saying bad things about yourself, I want you to go ahead and I want you to be kind to yourself. Till next time.